Okay, go to 1 Samuel chapter 18. We're going to be there for our time this morning. As you're going there, just wanted to highlight, we senior leaders of our church on staff and our elders, next weekend we have our annual elders retreat. It's a great time of investment for our church community as our senior leadership group goes away for a weekend and we pray and we think and we plan and we dream for all things KAC. So be praying for us next weekend. It really is a beautiful time away. But I've always said, KAC, you deserve the best. And so we have great communicators and great preachers here on our staff team. But next week, you get a little bit of a treat. My friend Brian Bueller is going to come. Brian, I believe, is the best, one of the best. Is he the best? Who knows? How do you even determine what the best is? But he's a fantastic preacher, one of the best expositors of the scriptures that I know of personally. He's been a pastor to me. He's a great friend of mine. He's going to be here next weekend, so make sure you don't miss it because it's going to be fire, as the teens say, okay? So it's going to be fantastic. Also, secondly, we are needing lots of leaders in our elementary KAC Kids ministry on Sunday morning. We just need people to love and disciple elementary school kids. Lots of people love holding the babies, but not as many people love running after my kids, which they're wonderful. I promise you, they're wonderful. But if you want to or have experience, we do need some of those people. You can go to our website, kac.ca/serve. Okay, I want to introduce you to the lads. These are my guys, all right? Some of my besties, some brother, ooh. I feel like there should be smoke behind me right now, and like my entrance song, like in WWE. Anyway, these are brothers from a different mother, as they were. Okay, so here, the first one, I should set this up. So when I first got on staff here, they had an open position, a pastoral position, and so I reached out. We had an interview process, but we reached out to my friend Simon, who had just come back from Africa. What you may not know is that I've actually known Pastor Simon since 2001. So we are like long-term friends. So part of that is that we have like crazy stories. Some we can share from the front, others we probably shouldn't. We were 18 and 19 and 20 and just crazy. But I want to show you just a few pictures from this like age-old friendship from Simon and I, okay? So the first one here, I don't know what was going on, but we are adorned in matching tracksuits. Probably getting in trouble from the manager of this particular store for some reason. I'm not quite sure. This second picture, actually, we were like a fake boy band at a youth conference for years and years on end. And so this is Pastor Simon right here. And I just want to highlight, first of all, how ridiculous we all look, but I also want to highlight that we went through a phase where like I was playing hockey at the time, and so like having flow was really cool at your helmet. So we all had long hair, but we thought it was cool. It wasn't, but we thought it was, to like straight iron your hair, you know? So this is Simon with his straight ironed hair, but he just ends up looking like a drowned rat. Now, I wish somebody would have told us that then, but we continued to do it. So these are Simon, these are my boys. The second one, this was last fall. This was me at a Seahawks game. I turned 40, and so some of the boys went to Seattle. This is my friend Matt. Matt and I have known each other since grade 6. And so there's like lots of memories of like, you know, going into Matt's hot tub when we were in high school, talking about like our high school crushes and stuff. So we go back a long ways. This is my buddy John. John is hilarious. We played hockey together. We like did worship tours together. I've known John since 2002 as well. Fantastic. This is my buddy Matt. Matt is my my mentor's son. So I've known this family. These are my guys. And here's what's beautiful about these people is that they don't care who I am. Like as a lead pastor, they know me apart from what I do here, and they're not impressed by me, but they love me. And they're willing to call me on my stuff, and they're willing to step in and pray. These are the sorts of guys that if anything ever happened to me, I know that these guys would step in. Like they would come and they would love who I love, right? I know that to be true. And so I feel really blessed, honestly, to have these sorts of the lads in my life that I can call, that I can go hang out and go watch football with on the regular in a very lonely and distracted world. We live in a very lonely time. There is a neuroscientist. His name is Dr. Michael D. Lieberman. He's a professor and he works at the Social Cognitive Neuroscience Lab at UCLA. This is connected to their psychology, psychiatry, and biobehavioral sciences. He's done lots of work in social connection. Very provocatively, Lieberman says this in his research. a lack of social connection, and social support have been examined as risk factors for comorbidity and were found to be a greater health risk than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. He is saying the isolated, lonely world that we live in is actually worse for your health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay? That's provocative. And this is really, really indicative of our world. In 2010, there was an art exhibit at the Museum for Modern Art. The artist, her name was Marina Abramovich. And so for 4 months in 2010, she set up this exhibit. And the exhibit was simply this. Abramovich would sit on a chair and would welcome complete strangers to sit across the table from her in another chair. And they would stare at each other for 4 minutes. So 756 hours of sitting in a chair, staring at complete strangers, over 1,500 different strangers for 4 minutes. And the whole thing, the whole exhibit was a protest to a lonely and distracted world. And some of the interactions and encounters that happened were so amazing to watch. You can actually look online at some of them as somebody would sit there and they would just simply look at each other and they would start to weep. And they started to connect by not saying a word. There were a few moments where the emotions were so high and so intense that they just wanted to reach out and touch each other. And so who are we as human beings? We are people who desire this closeness. And how do you get it in a lonely and distracted world? Like, we are living in an epidemic of loneliness. And this is affecting everyone. Jean Twenge, she's done enormous amounts of research between the connection of teenagers, social media, and smartphones. And she says in one of her works, she says this: but at the generational level, when teens spend more time on smartphones and less time on in-person social interactions, loneliness is more common. She wrote that in around 2012. This has exponentially gotten worse. Teenagers are lonely. In 2017, one of the most read articles in the Boston Globe was an article entitled, "The biggest threat facing middle-aged men isn't smoking or obesity, it's loneliness." So the author writes this article and it resonates with so many people because all of these middle-aged men say, yes, I am building family, I am building career, and I do not have any friends. Kids, men, and seniors. It's an epidemic for seniors. This was on the Government of Canada website. They said this: however, research shows that an estimated 30% of Canadian seniors are at risk of becoming socially isolated. According to the International Federation on Aging, quote, the number one emerging issue facing seniors in Canada is keeping older people socially connected and active. The truth is, my friends, we live in a lonely world. More connected than ever online, but less connected ever in person. And so you may come here this morning feeling the ache of not having those people. But piercing through our lonely world is a friendship that we're going to pay attention to this morning in the life of David. So if you're willing and able, I'd love for you to stand as we read the scriptures together. This is in 1 Samuel chapter 18. In verse 1, it says this: after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off his robe as he was wearing it and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. So Lord, in this lonely world, I think we have good news as we think about what it means to be connected to others in this fragile moment. So Lord, I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart would be pleasing to you. In your name we pray. Amen. You can have a seat. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at what friendship is, why you need it, and where you can find it. What it is, why you need it, and then finally, where you can find it. Here we are in 1 Samuel 18. This is right after the killing of Goliath. This is after David had finished talking with Saul. So we got to situate ourselves. David had just slayed the giant, the biggest military success in Israel's history. This guy is famous. Everybody loves him. Look at the courage. Look at the faith. This is what David just did. The camera then switches to this moment between David and Jonathan. And what we have here is actually two people who are coming together as friends, as we're going to see, who are complete opposites. Who is David? He's a shepherd from Bethlehem. He's a nobody from nowhere. Jonathan, as we're going to see, is the exact opposite. Jonathan is heir to the throne. He is the prince of Israel. Saul is his dad. So you have these two people without really any reason to come together, actually coming together. It says Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. This phrase, one in spirit, is where we're going to do some work. One in spirit, this is the New International Version. There's another version called the English Standard Version. And in that one, it's actually, I think, a better rendering. It's knit together. All right? So Jonathan became, you know what that is. Jonathan became knit together with David. Okay? These were literally brothers from a different mother. Because something about David, Jonathan saw, and he wanted friendship. He just wanted to move towards this person. Why? Why did he want friendship? Because I think lots of reasons. One of the significant ones, is that they had something in common. They had a common enemy. They had common interests, common passions. If you read in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verses 1 to 12, I believe, in that account, what you will read is Jonathan's own faith-filled, courageous endeavor to wipe out the Philistine army. And at great risk to himself, along with his armor bearer, they go and they take out some of the Philistine army. At guise of night, they go and do this. See, Jonathan himself was a warrior. Jonathan himself had a common enemy. And what did Jonathan just see in David? David, the little pipsqueak, goes out and murders the big giant. And Jonathan looks at David and he said, "That's my boy. This is a guy that I want to be friends with." And so what does he do? Their souls are knit together. There's something that binds them together. Commonality, shared passion, and values. They simply got each other. They got each other. And he loved him as himself. We're going to get to that in a second. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home. This wasn't like a kidnapping. This was just like the king's prerogative because of this military victory. This is an editorial comment from the author. We go back to the story. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. This is the second time that's been said, but what is a covenant with? In the Hebrew, it's like they cut a covenant. They established something on that day. Knit together, Jonathan and David entered this interesting friendship, a lasting commitment. The no matter what, I'm never leaving, always showing up, a great sacrifice for me, you can count on it. That's what they did. A covenant was made, a friendship covenant. And this idea of like a covenantal friendship is actually so distant from us in the West. We don't think of friendship in those terms. Lots of reasons why. One of them is that we actually interact more in a transactional friendship environment. Like your friends at work, sure, you might have a friendship, but there's transactions happening. You do this, I do this. When are you going to get that done? That sort of thing. There's transactional elements to it. But the idea that somebody will never leave no matter what is very, very absent to our social imaginary here in the West. In Gaelic or Celtic theology, they have this idea, this term, and the term is anam cara. Anam cara. And this literally means soul friends. Soul friends. Where they are bound together in this beautiful covenantal commitment, and they're attached at the hip. When we think about friendships, famous friendships, it's hard not to think of Samwise and Frodo. are friends from Lord of the Rings. And that beautiful line at the end of the movie where Sam says to Frodo, Mr. Frodo, I cannot carry the ring, but I can carry you, right? And he picks him out on his back and he goes, that's actually the idea that Sam and Frodo were like soul friends in this journey together. And this is, I think, what David and Jonathan, this is what the author is doing, is he's elevating their friendship. And we need to consider what it is. It's communal, it's covenantal, it's never giving up. And here, why did they have a covenant? Because at the bedrock of this commitment was he loved him as himself. That Jonathan loved David as himself. It's very reminiscent of Jesus's words. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Interesting how the Old Testament language connects with Jesus's instruction. What does it look like to love your neighbor as yourself? I think the scriptures are pointing us to David and Jonathan. As an example, you want to know what it's like? Look at this friendship. To love your neighbor as yourself. And you see this loving your neighbor as yourself or loving him as himself in verse 4. This is a pivotal moment in their friendship. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David. Now, I don't think they knew what was going on. I don't think at the time Jonathan knew the significance of this. But as we look back, what we can see is that this is the moment where the prince is renouncing his privilege and his position, and he's adorning the new king to be the king. What does it look like to love your neighbor as yourself? Jonathan gives up all that is available to him in sacrifice for his friend. Not only that, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow and his belt. Just the chapter before, whose sword does David use to cut the head off Goliath? Goliath's sword, the most powerful sword in their army. And now he gets the sword of the heir to the throne. This is a beautiful moment. As Jonathan reaches out, and as the prince, the heir to the throne, gives this away, he sacrifices his power and position for his friend. And it was recognizing of who David was and who he will be. What is friendship? Look at David and Jonathan. And this is what we want. This is what your soul wants as you are a connected human being. Eugene Peterson, in his book, Leap Over a Wall, says this about friendship. Friendship is a much underestimated aspect of spirituality. It's every bit as significant as prayer and fasting. Like the sacramental use of water and bread and wine, friendship takes what's common in human experience and turns it into something holy. See what he's saying? See, for us, I don't need friends. I'm too busy or I'm whatever. I don't need all of it. What David and Jonathan show us is that you do need it. And it's actually equal, in Peterson's view, to prayer and fasting and even the act of the Lord's Supper. And similarly, what Eugene is saying is that in the same way that the elements of bread and wine or grape juice point to something greater, so does friendship. Friendship points to the friendship available in God. And so my question for you as we think about what friendship is do you have in your life covenant friendship? Or do you have conditional friendships? Conditional friendships, which means I do this if you do that. And as long as we both have some reciprocity that benefits me, then I will be in it. But do you have people for the 3 a.m. phone call that you can pick up and say, hey, I need your help, come, something has happened? Do you have covenantal friendships or conditional ones based on your position or your power or your influence or your gifts or your resources or your money or whatever it is? Do you have it? David and Jonathan show us what actually it looks like to be in friendship with other people. So that's what it is. But why do you need it? We're going to look at another moment in their friendship in 1 Samuel 23. It says, well, David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph. Okay, so I just need to kind of switch this for your sake to understand what's going on. Verses 18 to 20 and further, the friendship of David and Jonathan actually serves as a contrast to Saul and David. Saul is the king. He sees David's success and he gets jealous. And so chapters 18 to 20 of 1 Samuel give us 6 moments where Saul intentionally tries to kill David. Whereas Jonathan and David give us what friendship looks like and the outcome of friendship, the author is showing a contrast with Saul. Here's what jealousy and bitterness does to a human being. And so we are now transported in 1 Samuel 23 to another one of these moments where Saul, because of his jealousy and his anger, is out for David's life. David was here in Horesh, the desert of Ziph, 16 miles south of where Bethlehem is, where David is from. David is a man on the run. Think of your favorite Hollywood movie of a chase. This is what is going on. Saul is after David. He wants him dead. Verse 16, and Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh. And what did he do? He helped him find strength in God. Think of the moment in David's life. Sleeping with one eye open, unsure of whether that is going to be the day where Saul and his armies find them and murder him and all of his people. This is a very fragile moment in David's life. And what does he need? Oh, he needs Jonathan. John, come. I need to find strength in God. I need something bigger and someone outside of myself in this moment. In such adversity, I need more than just myself to strengthen me in the Lord. And so here's what Jonathan says. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. Even my father Saul knows this. What does Jonathan say? He tells him the truth. Because in David's crazy right now, in his fear, in his anxiety, in this place, what does he need? He needs somebody to come and say, no. God is gonna be who he is. He is faithful. Don't be afraid, David. This is gonna happen, and don't worry, I will be second to you. I will do what I said I will do. Humble service, God's faithfulness, and God's promises. In the middle of the adversity, what David needed was a friend. And so when things get difficult for you, in the moment of adversity, in the valley of your life, who are you reaching out to? Who's your 3 a.m. phone call? Do you have those people? Like, I know for some in this room, like your marriage it's not going well. And you're losing sleep. And you're trying to sort out a light in a very dark moment. Man, you need a friend to tell you the truth, to sit with you, to cry with you, to not believe all of the things, who's not afraid gently to tell you the truth, both maybe about who God is and maybe about some of your crazy that you're believing. Who are you reaching out to? You need this friend. Think about like the parenting journey. Parenting is so hard. And we need a community of people to be like, I don't know how to do this. And right when I think things are good and calm, no, they're not. And my kid's going off the rails. You need friends to be with. Not that they would give you bad answers or trite answers, but just to sit with and be with you. I think David and Jonathan's friendship, this beautiful, close friendship that they have, is also balm for an aching soul, for those in this room who are single, who feel the ache not having that partner or that romantic relationship in your life, and you're filled with wonder and questions about why me and how did I get here and does anybody care, and you're kind of stuck in this moment. I think David and Jonathan give us this beautiful image of what could be for you. That even with the ache of not having that person, and maybe you want and maybe you're not sure and you're open, whatever that looks like, for the widows in our congregation, for these people, I think this is very hopeful for you that there's actually this type of friendship where you can have and still be connected to another human being. And I think what I'm trying to say to you is this: you are not self-sufficient. You do not have the resources inside of yourself to get through your darkest and hardest moment. Why do you need friendship? Because you are not self-sufficient. And what I've seen over and over and over again in ministry as a pastor, meeting loving people, is that when the crisis comes, when the adversity comes, and you have not invested into those friendships, it's like it's too late. Because that's the moment where you need the people. And then to try to find those people and build the depth of friendships in the crisis, it's that much harder. And so now is the time. Now is the time. And so when I think about all of this, and maybe your heart is leaping, oh, I have this or I want this, I ask myself, well, why don't we? Why don't you have these friendships? Why don't I maybe have these types of friendships? And as I think about our culture, there's two things. There's way more. Number one, here's why I don't think you have these friendships. Number one is you're too busy. You're too busy. Man, it's the cost of living, and so you want to say yes to more work just to keep up, and you got the vacation for your family, or you got the degree that you're pursuing, and so you just got to keep going. And so as I look at my calendar, as I look at my family rhythms and my work rhythms, and I got all of these things, I actually don't have time. Like I think about that Boston Globe article. Why is it that so many men in this room outwardly appear successful but are so lonely internally? Because of that, you're just too busy. You got too many demands on your time. And I get it. I totally get it. So this is like late fall, like November. I reach out to a friend of mine here. His name is AJ. I'm like, AJ, bro, we need to go to a Blazers game. He's like, okay, well, let's get it in on the calendar. It took us like 8 tries. Because does that day work? No, that doesn't. Does that day work? No, does that? Oh, that day works finally? No, it doesn't work. And we just had to keep going back. Text message, a huge thread to trying to figure out a Friday night when we can go to a Blazers game. But even better, we're like, let's go for dinner first. We're gonna get steak. We're going to go to Mitch's Kitchen and we're gonna get steak and we're gonna have cold beverage and then we're gonna go to the Blazers game. And it was 5 hours of hanging out with AJ, talking about life, enjoying our meat, having a cold beverage. We go to a Blazers game, they win in overtime, our voices are hoarse, and we leave the Blazers game, and we're like, we should do that more often. Like every Friday would be amazing. But what did it take? It took intentionality. Get ahead of your schedule, plan it in, take initiative to do something. Because here's the thing, is you need less work and more feasting. Less busy, more Blazers. Less schedule, more steak. This is the gift of friendship. It's to share in something together. And now is the time to do it. So the first reason is you're just too busy. I'm busy. I get it. We're all busy. You need to put it in. Secondly, is you're too hurt. This is something that we all want, we all need. But if we're honest, if we're transparent, to put yourself out there to build a friendship is a very vulnerable spot to be. And sometimes in friendship, we get stung. And we trust this other person, and we put ourselves out there, and we make those dates to chill and hang out. And then the friendship goes sideways for whatever reason. They change, you change, or whatever occurs, and we end up feeling hurt. You feel burned. They backed out. They didn't show up. They told this secret. They changed course, or they lied. And then you're left with the rubble of the emotions of that. And you think to yourself, I don't want that pain. I'm not having that pain again. So I'm going to go into a cave. for self-protection I don't want to risk again. It happens. And I don't want to trivialize the pain because I don't want to trivialize it. But I also want to say it's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened to Krista and I. And I would just say this. Our decision, our choice in the middle of feeling that was to continue to love people, was to continue to push, was to continue to not let the cynicism or the bitterness or the unforgiveness start to creep into our ethos, start to creep into our relationships, because loving other people is always worth it. And so there's forgiveness you have to work through, there's bitterness you have to work through, but I'm telling you, life on the other side of it is worth it. And you may not ever be able to be friends with those people ever. Like, I don't know. But I'm telling you to keep your heart soft. See, we all desire this, and yet we're terrified of it at the same time because we carry the emotional baggage of broken friendship. The church has been thinking about friendship for so long. I just read a book from the 12th century. The 12th century. It's from a guy named Aelred of Rievaulx. He was a Cistercian monk, the abbot of a monastery. And the book reads really interestingly because Aelred actually brings in kind of fictional monks to have conversations with them about friendship. And the book is called Spiritual Friendship. And here's what Aelred says, 12th century. He says this: friendship so cushions adversity and chastens prosperity. All right, it cushions adversity, like the worst moment, that hard thing you're going through. There's a pillow to land on with a friend. But at the same time, it also chastens prosperity. In other words, you don't fly so high. You have people who are able to bring you down so you don't get too high on yourself. That among mortals, almost nothing can be enjoyed without a friend. A friendless person is like an animal, having no one in whom to rejoice in prosperity and grieve in sadness, in whom to confide if the mind suspects some threat, and with whom to communicate an unusually sublime or splendid event. I love the 12th century language. See what he's saying? When your mind perceives a threat, anxiety and fear and worry, who are you reaching out to? Do you have things regularly in your calendar to say, man, I am terrified of the Trump tariffs. What in the world is our economy gonna, like all of those things. Who are you reaching out to discuss that? And then the other side is bad. It happened, it finally happened. I graduated, or I got the email, or I got promoted, or I got whatever. We're pregnant. Who are you phoning? Let's hang out and celebrate and feast and rejoice this sublime or splendid event. This is called spiritual friendship. And you need it. You need it. What it is, why you need it, and finally, where to find it. How do I move from here? I think I want to say too, like, personalities dictate a lot of this. Like, I know people who need like 20 friends. You need lots. There's other people, like, two's enough. That's all I need. I don't want all. Wherever you are in that, this is the week to invest into it. Where can you find it? I hope here. I really hope here. We can find it here in this imperfect group of people. To join a group, like, I think in a secular, distracted, and lonely world, one of the main contributions of the church is social connection. To be known, to have somebody to go somewhere and somebody knows who you are. This is one aspect of our groups. Why do we have primetime events? So that seniors can battle the isolation that they feel. Why do we have men's ministry? Men's ministry is going to a Blazers game on February 7th. Why? So that you can just hang out with another dude or dudes and just watch a game and find friends. Women's ministry, and even better, life groups. Life groups is one of the heartbeat ministries of our church. And what you will find is if something really, really hard happens to you, and you speak with one of our pastors, oftentimes the first question is this: are you in a life group? And if you're not, we're still gonna love you. But we ask, are you in a life group? Is there a place you can land on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, Saturday night, where people know who you are so you can get the care that you need? In a community like this, it is absolutely impossible for paid staff to care for everybody, and this is the beauty of life groups. So join. How do you just join a group? Join a group. I would say as you join this group, one of the things that my dad has given to me as a gift, like this is dad wisdom, when it comes to being friends with people, he says, if you want to have friends, be interested and interesting. Be interested. Ask questions of another person. If you have a 30-minute conversation and it's all about you, my sense is it's not going anywhere. Be interested in the other person and then be interesting. Add something, add color, add something to the conversation. And in our very, very addicted to screen world, this elementary social principle is absent. People don't know how to do this, and so be interested and interesting. And then secondly, I would just say start to serve somewhere. Some of the best friendships I have ever experienced have come serving Jesus together. The best friends that I have, those guys I've served Jesus with. It's one thing, sure, be in a living room face to face and tell everybody about your emotions or not. But there's another thing to link arms and shoulder to shoulder, make Jesus known in beautiful ways. That's soul friendship. So this was spring many years ago. It was my second year that I was here, and from this stage, I said, I was terrified. I was like, I don't know what this looks like, and I don't know how we're gonna do this, but I think our church needs to be on the forefront of truth and reconciliation with Indigenous people. I don't know what that looks like. I'm clearly not Indigenous myself, but we need to play a part, and I don't know what it looks like, and I was terrified. That day, it was that day that Norm McCallum first attended our church. And I'm out there, and I'm like, oh man, like, how's this gonna land? And Norm comes to me with a business card, and he says, we need to chat. I was like, no, who is this guy? What I didn't know is that Norm, as an elder, an Indigenous elder, had been serving Jesus and Indigenous people for like 4 decades. And he's like, I want to be in on whatever this looks like. And so we started a friendship. And we went to Denny's, and we had a lot of Denny's. A lot of Denny's. Like always looking at the spoon, is this clean enough or should I send it back, right? A lot of Denny's with Norm. And it was in that context where I built a friend. Like 40 years my senior, different ethnicity, different backgrounds. And so I was able to ask questions. I was able to ask non-Indigenous questions from an Indigenous perspective. What about this? What about that? All of the questions that you may have of Indigenous people over a grand slam at Denny's, I was able to talk to him about it. And he talked to me, and we became friends, and all of the contention around this national conversation of truth and reconciliation, it didn't matter because Norm and I were friends. And so hilariously, Norm would come to my office. He was on our staff. He would come to my office, he would knock on the door, and he would say, you got 10 minutes, big chief? I said, Norm, always, man, come and sit down. And we hung out. And so because of this friendship of serving Jesus together, here's a few pictures of Norm and I. We were at the Kamloops powwow together. He was so proud of the grand entry. It's pretty cool. My kids were able to learn from Norm. It's amazing. This is Norm and I. We were doing Zoom. Clearly COVID. Norm, not so much. This is Norm in his elder shirt. This was given to him when he became an elder at West Bank First Nation. And he was so proud of that shirt. Yeah. And this is Norm and I when we went to northern Saskatchewan, like hours and hours north. Go north. When you're north, go norther than north. And we're making Jesus known to a group of Indigenous people in Saskatchewan. And Norm passed away last spring. But I had a soul friend. A friend that like impacted my life. And I miss him. I wish he would say, "You got 10 minutes, Big Chief." But the way that this happened was I started to serve Jesus. Some of the most profound friendships you can have, serving Jesus. Welcome into the mission. Get going. Come into the game. Out of the stands, onto the field. Serve Jesus with people. You become friends because common passion, common purpose. We're showing up. We're going to Alpha. We're doing the stuff together. This is how it happens here at KC. Finally, man, how do you find it in Jesus? In Jesus. In Jesus. Love this. Luke 7:34. Jesus is speaking. The Son of Man. This is a term he gave himself from Daniel chapter 7. He brings this to himself. He refers to himself a lot as Son of Man. He said, came eating and drinking. And you say, he's speaking to the religious elite, here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Like, one of the criticisms of the religious elite of Jesus is that he was friends with people that nobody else wanted to be friends with. That they looked at him feasting, hanging out with tax collectors and sinners, and they critiqued him. How dare you hang out with these worthless people? There's more important people. Go hang out with them. But Jesus says, I want to be friends with people who nobody wants to be friends with. Friends. So, like, there are those people that you think are outside the realm and the boundary, who do that thing, who think differently than you, who practice that, who are so far from God. And we like to draw those boundaries. We say, oh no, they're not the people. They're the out group, we are the in group. And Jesus comes to those categories that you have in your head and says, actually, those are the people I want to be friends with. Those are the people that I've come to. Those are the people who know that they're sick and they need a doctor. And I have come to be friends with those people. Friend of sinners, of which I am one. And praise God that he crosses boundaries for people who don't get it right and dies in their place, so that I could befriend God. It's beautiful. Finally, he says this in John 15, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend. Think about that moment that Jonathan has with David as he takes off the robe, signaling who he is. And he adorns David with the robe. And he gives him his tunic, his outer garment, his sword, and his stuff. And he says, I will give up something for your benefit. This is what Jesus is saying, that you want to know the love of God, that he gave up his life for his friends. That on the cross, what you see is Jesus giving up, robing you with what he has. His righteousness is given to you, and at great cost to himself, welcomes you in. That the royal figure as God renounces his power and position, and he gives us his righteousness. That Jesus is our friend who welcomes us in to relationship with God, with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so for Christians, the idea that you can be friends with God is like, yeah, cool. But for those people in this room who are just seeking, who are unsure, this is a mind-blowing thing that you can be in relationship with God and call him friend. Friend. And it's this Jesus, for those of you who've been burnt by friends, who need to feel the forgiveness that Jesus brings, to offer it to somebody else. That Jesus is the friend you need. And as we think about revival, as we think about a special move of God in our church and in our city, what is it? It's you and me becoming friends with God. Friendship with God. Close. Relating together. So stand as we sing. the anthem of our church of renewal and friendship with Jesus.